I'm on live now. Um, wait for 2 minutes so that people can share it on my feed. Technical crew, can you share it on my feed? Thank you. We're live now on Facebook. Welcome everyone to Doctors Global Conference. Doctors Global Conference, as you know, it's a collection of medical doctors from all over the world, people calling in from Australia, US, Canada, and we brainstorm on the existing news and the existing crisis we have concerning coronavirus. Do this show is that we pick all the evidence and all the facts, all news from the regulatory bodies, and we put it in a simple page, and we make sense, man, because there's so many news everywhere, statistics, research, data. So we collate it together. It's a way of public education to reduce the spread of the virus. Today, it's going to be a special edition. The doctors are not going to be talking because we have two great leaders in our midst, two great community leaders, and also leaders of two great religious leaders. Let me just put it like that. And they'll be talking on the role of religion in curtailing the spread of this pandemic. Not only that, they're going to be talking about every other thing, religion, that relates religion, and what are we doing? What are they doing at the current moment? Today is 31st of May, 2020. And there's no better time for the world to work together than now, to come together to reduce the spread, if possible. Take it away. We got amazing feedbacks in all our previous edition, amazing feedbacks, really. And so many questions came in for this particular episode. We had well over 100 questions ready. They were sending us questions from Facebook, message, emails to ask these religious leaders, but we cannot cover it all. We'll try as much as possible to cover the much we can. Send in your questions. We'll take the live questions as they are coming. We'll take them as they're coming. Send in your contribution, your comment. Most importantly, tell us where you're listening from. We know we have audience from Egypt, India, Australia, South Africa. We really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Before we begin the show, we have here with us a relative of a COVID-19 victim, Mrs. Susan Lacoste. Miss Sue, I call her, lost her mom some few weeks back, and it has been a very painful time for her, not only for her, but for other victims or relatives of the victims of this virus. Miss Sue, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share here.
Oh, I'm so sorry for what you're passing through. If you can briefly just tell us what you went through. I will introduce the guests as we want to begin speaking, but we just want to hear from you because I know you are grieving right now.
Yes. Thank you very much. I do have, if you want to share, I don't know if it'll fit in with the program, I do have a story of how God's compassion has really shown through with everything that's happened, and how it's been such a blessing having people like you just caring and sharing. And so I really appreciate it. My mom was in a nursing home near where I live here in Maryland, and in the beginning of April, I think it was April 4th, one of the caregivers in her facility started showing symptoms of COVID-19. So she was sent home and she was tested, and 5 days later the test came back positive. About 2 weeks later, the residents started coming down with it, and it has just exploded. And they have something like 36 staff are out now, sick with the illness. They have had 40 or 50 or more residents come down with the virus. They've had 30-some deaths, my mom being one of them. So nursing homes are very, very vulnerable to this. And I know a lot of people are saying, I'm young, I'm healthy, I don't need to wear a mask, it's not a problem. But I was at the grocery store the other day, and there was someone stocking shelves who I guess thought his mask was uncomfortable. He had it pulled down, so it was doing no good at all. And he was up on a ladder with putting cans on the shelf, and the cans were right in front of his face. So he was breathing on these cans. And I thought, all it would take would be if one of the caregivers were at this grocery store and they picked a can up off the shelf that had been stocked by someone who unknowingly had the virus and wasn't wearing a mask. They could take that can and maybe adjust their face mask or rub their nose, and then they catch the virus. They go to work and they spread it at work. In a nursing home, the caregivers, they're changing diapers because some of these elderly, like my mom, just can't do hardly anything for themselves. So the caregivers are changing diapers, they're giving baths, they're in very, very close, intimate contact with the residents, and it's very, very difficult for them not to pass the virus between themselves, between the residents, from room to room. And my mom went to the hospital, and while I was not able to be in the nursing home because it was locked down, they weren't allowing visitors, I imagine the nursing home did not have the extent of isolation protocols that they have in the hospital. In the hospital, when my mom was in hospice, they put a gown on me, they put booties on me, gloves, a mask, and another mask over it with a face shield. So I was very well protected. And the nurse supervised me dressing. She supervised to make sure I took everything off correctly. I'm really not sure they're doing that in the nursing homes. The caregivers here are paid very little. And they're wonderful, wonderful people, and they love the residents, and they take such good care of them. But I really don't think they have the kind of training that doctors and nurses have. And I can imagine that it's very, very difficult to contain something like this virus in a nursing home setting. So my mom caught the virus. They sent her to the hospital. The ER doctor called to say that she was exquisitely ill, which I've never heard that expression before. I thought that was a very appropriate way to refer to her. She had pneumonia. Her breathing was very labored. And then she went into fortunately, this hospital has an in-house resident hospice program. So they were able to just take her down the hallway to take her to hospice, and they took very, very good care of her. But again, I want to emphasize, with her being in a nursing home, if a caregiver from a nursing home comes in contact with the virus in any way, they can take it into the facility, and then 100 people can become infected. And that's what happens when people don't wear face masks. And I don't think they understand that, but that's an important point, I think.
Wow, I'm so sorry. It's a very revealing new narration that you just said. There's a lot of unknowns about this virus, a lot of challenges. I'll list a couple of them, like in addition to what you've just said, inadequate training across the world, especially caregivers. I'm a medical doctor. I know the challenges in training. The nurses are not properly trained. There are so many other challenges, funds, personnel availability. Wow, it's so I lack words. I lack words. I'm so sorry for your loss. Okay,
Thank you so much.
I'm so sorry
But
for
I
your
also want
loss.
to emphasize, in this country, in the United States, there's been a lot of publicity, a lot of reaching out to doctors and nurses and hospitals and first responders, firefighters, EMTs, those sort of people. But you hear very little about the nursing homes because I guess if you don't know somebody or you don't have a parent who's in one of these senior facilities, then it's sort of invisible. You don't see it. But I really feel they are facing the greatest challenges because to some extent hospitals have trained for pandemics. They know what the protocols are. I mean, this has been far more than anybody's ever dealt with before. But they have the basic training. I don't know that the nursing homes have been at all prepared in any way for this kind of a situation. So my heart goes out to them, and I would encourage us to put more effort into building up and supporting our senior care community.
Thank you, Miss Sue. Thank you. Miss Sue dedicated a song to her mom, then to other people that are also grieving at this time. We'll play this song at the end of the show. Thank you. I don't know if Imam or his lordship has one or two words of condolence before we go into the topic proper.
Yes, I would like to say that my heart goes to you, and may God Almighty give comfort to you and to your family at this time. And I'm sorry for your loss. We ask God Almighty to bring peace to your heart and the great memory of your mother. We have been told in Islam that, you know, the parents is the most important people in our life, and especially mothers. When a person loses their mother, then they end up to be a child, because your mother treats you always as a child. And may God bless you and bless the family and give you comfort.
Lordship.
Thank you. Oh, he's muted.
Okay, let me see if I can unmute him. Hey, Your Lordship, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, Sue, you know, what can I say? Just to add my voice to that of Ma'am, and I think you're a very brave woman to come through all that and then to be able to share your story. For us as Christians, today is a very, very special day. Today is Pentecost Sunday, and I pray that God's mercy will be upon your mother, and that those of you left behind will have the courage to be able to bear the loss. You know, life is just, it's not ended. Life has only just slightly changed. So may God grant her eternal peace.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sue. You can hang in there with us. We know you're so busy, so just let me know when you want to leave. Today we have two great community leaders, like I've said before. Let me start introducing them because I haven't introduced them properly. In no particular order, we have Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka. He's the current bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Sokoto, Nigeria. Bishop Kuka, you're welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We also have, let me pin him to the screen. Give me a second. We also have Imam Mohammed Majid. Imam Mohammed Majid is the executive imam of All Doors Area Muslim Society Center in Sterling, Virginia, a recipient of the Washingtonian of the year 2009 and Human Rights Award 2005 Fairfax. He is the chairman of International Interfaith Peace Corps and the chairman of Moflehan, a think tank that focuses on confronting violence with religious paradigm. He's also the former president of Islamic Society of North America. Imam Majid, you're welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for inviting. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So yeah, thank you. I'll start just a little line of introduction. The medical community and various political leaders have been dishing out recommendations, but as many of us in public health, you know that if an effective public health policy and if in this crisis, we have to, two of you are major religious leaders with over 1.5 billion followers in Islam and over 1.5 billion followers in Christianity. Many of these followers to religious leaders forget at this time, very critical time, the way we gather, the way everything has changed. People are losing their job, but we need to find. I'll just begin with just a general question. Perhaps you could share your thoughts about it and their practices and how you think the communities are well positioned to tackle. Over to you. Let us know into your thoughts.
Who should go first?
In no particular order.
I think you also have accepted that except God, who doesn't share his glory with anybody. There is no one, absolutely no one, no matter his powers or her powers, who saw this coming at all. So we are only in a state of total lack of preparedness. And I think that one of the things one can only say to the doctors, to the caregivers, to everybody, is that first of all, we need global solidarity. First, to just accept that we are in this boat together. It's a long journey, it's a very difficult journey. And I hear all you're saying about the need to train personnel. I think that is very, very important. But there is a very important part of the human person that needs perhaps far more training. That is the human heart. We can have all the training in the world and have the best trained people in the world. But if your heart is not in the right place, you will find all the excuses in the world to do the wrong. So I think that the area for us to focus on is the need for our global solidarity. But to come back to the faith communities, and I speak here about the Catholic Church and by extension the Christian community. Indeed, if anybody should be familiar with plagues and pandemics, or has any level of expertise, it actually should be the Catholic Church, strange as it may sound, because the first plague actually, if you notice, most of the plagues and pandemics have taken place around Italy or and Rome. Of course, as you know, that is where the Pope is, and that's where the headquarters of the Catholic Church really is. So, just to make the point that way back in 165 AD, the first 100 years, the world dealt with plagues, and at that time there was every Christian was Catholic, and Christianity had to wrestle with paganism. And for the pagans, really, there was really nowhere to turn to. And indeed, if you look at some of the literature, there's actually a correlation between the growth of Christianity and the way that Christians responded to these pandemics, i.e., the cardinal principle of Christianity is the love of Christ, which is the greatest legacy that Jesus left for us. So when these pandemics began to erupt and people were fleeing, abandoning the dead, it was actually the very small vulnerable Christian communities way back in the first and second centuries of Christianity that were actually showing love and showing solidarity to one another. Like people more or less tested and found the pagan gods really unable to deal with these problems. So the point I'm making therefore is that I can speak rather authoritatively about the Catholic Church, that we have organizations like St. Vincent de Paul, we have the nuns running hospitals. So this kind of activity is not strange, it's not new to us at all. And I'd like to end by saying that we, for example, in the Catholic Church in Nigeria, the Catholic Bishops' Conference, have been on the front line of responding, to this pandemic. We offer to the federal government and the people of Nigeria all of our 435 hospitals spread across the country. And all we said was, look, you may not need, we pray you don't need them, but should the need arise, our facilities are here for the people of Nigeria. So in terms of keeping to the protocols and so on, we're not experts. Our responsibility and business is to implement what you, the experts, and the government in power has to say. And really, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has actually always focused on appealing to the religious leaders to support government policy. And I think on this one, we're literally on all fours with government. It's been a very difficult journey, but as the program goes on, we'll try and share some of the lessons that we've learned so far.
I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, Imam Majid said, what's happening on your side of the religion? What's going on?
Yes. First of all, I would like to say that I appreciate what the bishop was saying regarding of the Catholic Church offering their facilities to the community. Myself, I was blessed before this lockdown. I was in Rome, and I met with the Pope, His Holiness, with the group of religious leaders. We initiated something called Abrahamic Initiative, which is Muslims and Christians and Jews together, come together to work addressing the needs of humanity. And this initiative is working now together in the United States, addressing the needs of a community to work together in addressing the spread of COVID-19 and how can we as a religious leader to address that in our local neighborhood. Now, there's a few things. When this virus starts spreading in our area, in Virginia, Washington, DC area, we gathered imams and from across the area, and we created a council to address this issue. And we decided to close mosques. We've been closing the mosque more than 2 months. Absolutely no prayer, congregation prayer or Friday prayer, to protect human life. Because we've been taught in Islam, the protection of human life and preserving human life take priority above every other things. And God can hear our prayer from home. God does not need us to be in the mosque at this time, because the preserving of life, it is one of the higher objectives of Islamic law. Therefore, we decided to go virtual in every aspect of our services. The other things that we realize also, this pandemic have exposed many vulnerable people in our communities, those who don't have basic needs be met. Therefore, we created the social service committee, has Muslim, Christian, Jewish also in it, and we're addressing the needs of our community, delivering food, grocery to families who are in need. In Ramadan, we used to have 600 people come to our mosque every night before COVID-19. This year, we didn't do it because of we don't for physical distance. To create, an environment where you're protecting human life. To start delivering, we made arrangements with restaurants to deliver the food to those people at home. My point is that a religious community have a big role to play in creating awareness and understanding of how to protect yourself, how to create a community of compassion in your neighborhood, and how to address the need of the vulnerable people in those communities. And the final point I want to say that in every Christian, Muslims, Jewish, Hindu community, Buddhist, and other religion, there's medical doctors and health care providers. They need our support, and people in nursing home working there, they need our support, moral support, spiritual encouragement. Therefore, we've been praying for our medical doctors because they are in the front line. And some of them have put in their life online. And we have doctors who passed away. We lost life here in America and around the globe. Therefore, we have to pray together as a religious community for those people in the front line. I call them the white army, meaning that they're wearing the white robe. That are the people that we need to pray for at this time.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Bishop.
Yeah, no, I was just saying I'm wearing a white robe. So
You are a doctor of the heart, Bishop. You are the doctor of the heart.
Talking about a white robe, this period has really thrown a lot of questions to faith and the way we practice. A few weeks ago, while commenting on the progress on containing this virus, Governor Cuomo said something, and he said while he was making mention of how the doctors have helped to curtail the spread of the virus, he said, God did not do it. Faith did not do it. I'm quoting him directly. God did not do it. Faith did not do it. We did it. I believe in miracle. And a lot of Christians also, not only Christians, Muslims also, the people in the faith community, not only Muslims, people in the faith community, we all believe in miracle. But it's hard to strike a balance between faith at this point, science, and miracle. Is there a meeting point? Imam Majid, I'll direct the question to you. Do you think we should leave it all to science and watch the religion sit behind, or is one independent to another? Because a lot of people are just asking questions. Where are you in the front line?
Yes, it's very important. It's very important that religious leaders to listen to the health officials in the neighborhood. God is the one who created science and is the one who revealed religion. Therefore, there's no contradiction. God is the one who created this world and created the physical laws and medical laws of how body functions and how we can treat diseases and sickness. And therefore, a doctor and medicine as a part of the tool of God of healing people. And therefore, I don't see the contradiction at all. And very important for religious people not to dismiss the need of listening to the medical advice, because by doing so, you have listened to the law of God. That's very important for us to pray and to have medicine. In Arabic, we say dua and dawa, which means prayer and medicine. That both go together. We cannot say we rely on God, we trust in God, and then we don't do anything about it. You know, there's a joke, if I may say, in this context, that a guy, he said, I don't do anything, I just rely on God, I don't listen to anyone, I don't seek help from anyone, and he was drowning. And then therefore the fire department came to save him. He said, no, I want God to save me. The police came to save him. He said, no, I want God to save me. Then the guy drowned. And then he said to God, how comes you let me drown? And you know, I trusted you. He said to him, I send you the police. And he said, no. I send you the fire department. And he said, no. You know, God help you through people, you know, through the doctors, through the nurses, to taking measures, washing hands, making sure that you have physical distance. For there's misconceptions of religion that people have said that we should just go to the mosque, you know, rely on God. But God told us that we have to use our mind and to protect oneself. And that's why in Islam, prayer can be suspended because of danger to human life. Laws can change because of saving human life. Therefore, it is very important for us to tell people, do not listen to rumors, WhatsApp misinformation of telling you, if you drink this water, holy water from Imam Majid, I don't do that kind of thing, or you know, and then you get cured from the coronavirus, or just drinking tea and pray on the tea and you get prayed. No, that's all this nonsense. You have to believe God is the one who created the medicine, created the sickness, and he's the one who cured it. The miracles does happen, but we have to use the medicine and to use the necessary measurement to protect oneself.
Thank you, audience. You are listening to this wonderful conversation from two great leaders of the two religions. Send in your comments. Let us know where you're listening from. We're going to read the questions to them live. His Lordship, what do you say? You've heard what Imam said. Where does religion stand when, can you juxtapose it, faith and science? Because some people want healing, and some other people say, no, we're going to leave it to science. Is there a meeting point between these two acts? You know, I've heard preachers that want to say, let's go lay our hands on them and they're going to get well. We don't need the doctors. And I've also heard doctors saying, the preachers are not doing anything. We're just the ones giving the medicine. And where does it stand? Faith and science, the balance.
Well, you know, the late Pope John Paul II of happy memory, who is now St. John Paul, is quoted to have said that foolishness, even foolishness, is a gift of God, but it has to be used wisely. Let me go back to what you said about the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo. And actually, I don't know, but I suspect that his father will be very embarrassed to hear him make this statement, because his father, Mario Cuomo, I never had the good luck of meeting him, but he was, during his time, my favorite American politician. I followed his career from, he was lieutenant governor, he was secretary of New York State, lieutenant governor, governor for three-time governor of New York, a devout Catholic who wrestled with the problems of the Catholic faith and his God in a highly liberal environment like the state of New York. And in each and every one of those areas, he stood very tall. So frankly, I don't think that in his grave, he would be happy to hear his son taking this very cynical view about faith. But we're not in argument with anybody. I know that over the last 20 or so years, Newsweek magazine has done at least 2 stories on miracles. Are there miracles? Do we believe miracles and all that kind of stuff. Well, these questions are purely and simply academic, and we can have academic conversations about them. However, the question is, a rose is a rose. What does name really say? Some people might call it miracles, others will call it chance, some will call it luck, others will call it fate, others will call it destiny, some will call it happenstance or fortune, karma, others will call it magic, whatever name. But guess what? I think those of us who are spectators can have that luxury of wondering whether miracles do exist or they don't. I don't know whether Lionel Messi, the world's best footballer so far, I don't know whether he takes the readings in his church as a Catholic. I don't know about that. But it will be very interesting to know why is it. I'm sure his coach taught him how to score goals and how to play good football. But I don't think his coach told him that he should make the sign of the cross and look up to heaven every time he scores a goal. And every match Lionel Messi has ever scored a goal, you notice that the first thing he does before he celebrates is he makes the sign of the cross, raises his two fingers up, literally saying, God, I offer this, this is from you. So it's not a question of what we think or what we speculate. And miracles are miracles. And let me give you an example. One of my favorite texts in the Bible is John chapter 9, where we hear the story of Jesus healing a man who was born blind. The Bible actually says specifically that he was born blind. Now, of course, they asked Jesus, whose fault is it that this man was born blind? Because in the Jewish society was almost like African society. They believed that if something goes wrong with you, as we say in Nigeria, God don't catch you. And so the question was, what really has happened to this guy? Now, Jesus healed him. And in that text, Jesus does what you don't see him do in other texts in the Bible where miracles are performed. He actually made a paste from the earth, put it on the man's face and told the man, go and wash your face. The guy goes, washes his face, comes back, and he now can see. Now, there's a very fascinating conversation between the Jewish authorities whose cynicism about who Jesus was has to deal with this problem. And they say to the man, look, what really happened? This man is a sinner. He couldn't have cured you. And the poor man said, look, I'm really not interested in the theology of sin or whatever. All I know is that I was blind. Now I can see. They go to the man's parents to ask him. And the father said, look, I don't know. Our son was blind. Now he can see. So really the point I'm making is, at the end of the day, it depends. Those of us who are speculating can speculate. But the person who has benefited from a miracle is not, like Imam said very well, a miracle is God's agency using all of us. So when you give something to somebody who desperately needs food, you are a miracle worker. When you help somebody, you're working a miracle. So miracles are not what you might call God's shattering interventions in a way, a manner that shocks us all. So my position, quite simply, is there is no conflict between faith and science. What you doctors are dealing with now has its origin from Islamic, the Islamic religion and Christian religion. They laid the foundation. It was religion that laid the foundation for medicine. And the Imam can speak very eloquently about this. So I don't think there is any distinction, any reason to debate the relationship between faith and science, because each and every one of them is an offer from God.
Wow, that is mind blowing. Thank you. I have a lot of questions, but I will give also my other brilliant doctors on the panel, because we're receiving questions from everywhere, and we have questions. Dr. Joseph, I'm sure you have something you want to a question for them. Can you hear me, Dr. Joseph? If you can hear me, Dr. Orinami,
okay.
Can you? Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Go
I
ahead.
think I can hear you now. All right. Okay. I'm very sorry about your loss too. I sincerely pray that God will give you the fortitude to bear the irreparable loss. I feel highly honored, to meet with you, your lordship. And for several Sundays now, I've been unable to attend the mass. I had planned to go for confession, but the COVID lockdown has not allowed me to do so. And I hope I'll be able to do that one day and very soon. Please, Your Lordship, we know that religious practice have enormous potential for addressing the social problems of COVID-19. But what we currently have today is that many pastors today in many countries across the world has actually trivialized the issues of COVID-19. I'm an obstetrician and I work in infectious disease unit. I work in Lassa unit. I've operated several Lassa patients, and I know that these diseases exist. I've been able to interact with COVID patients in the hospital where I work. We have a lot of COVID patients admitted there. We see them, we interact with them, and we know that this disease actually exists. Some of them have very mild symptoms, and some also have very severe symptoms. But many people still find it difficult to believe that this disease actually exists, and even some pastors too. Some very notable pastors in Nigeria, I'll start with Nigeria and many other parts of Africa and other developing countries, has even requested to be given an opportunity to go into such ward, into the COVID ward, to heal patients. What message do you have for the public regarding this and to such pastors who really want to see, who want to explore, who want to go into some of these units to see some of these patients being managed for COVID-19?
Well, first of all, let me thank you and say that, for us in the Catholic Church in particular, COVID-19 has multiple dimensions. I say so because ours is a contact faith. Let me put it that way. Many churches, for example, there are those who simply see the pastor who leads the prayers, and then maybe somebody takes the offertory or whatever the case may be, and they go. But for us as Catholics, it's a bit more complicated because we are, as I said, a contact faith. The center of our worship is the Eucharist. So the priest doesn't just celebrate the Mass and then turn back and walks away in the way and manner that is very easy for leaders of other religions to do. And the Mass is a celebration. At the end, you'll have, midway through, you'll have to give people, communion. And the entire gamut of Catholic life revolves around the 7 sacraments, each of which requires some contact. Now, of course, a lot of care is being taken about all those things, but I'm just making that point so you can understand that we too have had to make tremendous readjustments in terms of, for example, almost like the nurses and the doctors, we have a sacrament that we administer to those who are dying. So there are those who need to receive communion, for example, before they at their point of death. There are those who require the priest for anointing. We've tried to take all kinds of care to make sure that those priests who go in to administer those sacraments are sufficiently well equipped. And this is again why you had such a high prevalence of priests running in their hundreds, dying in a place like, Italy and in some other parts of the world. But to come back to the question, I think that, well, let me say, whatever your situation may be, you have to be alive to go to confession. God sees the heart, and what is even more important, that I don't think, again, we've had to make adjustment because one of our sacraments requires that, just like you said, people go to confession. Again, is one of the contact aspects of our faith. But we've had to make arrangements about those things because, as I said, God sees the commandments of God are written in our hearts. So we don't put pressure on people to say that, you have to do X, Y, Z, because you have to be alive, to go to confession. You have to be alive to go to church. This is why all the rules and regulations, for example, we here in Sokoto, the system has been relaxed a little bit. And whereas the state has on just about 10 or so rules and regulations, ours are 24 or 25, covering very, very complicated areas of our relationship, with our parishioners. As for the pastors who say that they would like to go into the wards, to heal these people, I don't have a problem with that, but I have a problem with the consequences. You know, there is a thin line between criminality and the office that you occupy. If you run a traffic light in America, I don't think that anybody will tell you that because you are a priest or you are a bishop, therefore you're not going to be penalized. You know, there are quite a few religious leaders who have done some really outlandish things that are totally unacceptable. People have sat down on their phone, in their homes and pretended that they can cure people by prayer and so on and so forth. I'm not saying prayer doesn't work. That's what we've talked about. But clearly we have a problem. And between all these, there are going to be charlatans. They will come in different shades and in different forms. It is the responsibility of the state to regulate, some of these conducts and attitudes and the way that people, conduct themselves, because we're in a very, very difficult situation. Now, it is okay if you deny that, coronavirus exists, but you don't have that, you cannot transfer that ignorance to other people or cause harm to them. So for me, a lot of the issues are largely regulatory. It depends on, what the laws surrounding this kind of attitude and behavior really is.
Imam Majid, thank you so much, Your Lordship. Imam Majid, you've heard what the Lordship said. Many, you've heard the question. Many people base their doubts on the conflict between health guidelines and the practice of their faith. In Islam, how do you balance it? Because you've heard the question. How do you balance? There's a lot of questions I want to ask, but let me just leave it there. How do you balance between these health guidelines? Don't pray, don't gather. We know that many of our religious practices is communal. How do you balance between these guidelines and the practice of our faith? And how do we ensure that these religious guidelines don't set us back in our relationship with God?
Yes, when our state have Virginia, they have a lockdown. I created a kind of documents with a group of other imams in the area of guidelines for the Muslim community. And one of the things that's very important that we have said, that if you believe that by coming to the mosque or insisting to gather, you are obeying God, you are not. With very blunt language, God wants you to stay home. And therefore, by coming to the mosque or gathering people, you're going to create a problem. And I'm going to give you an example of that. One of the local imam did not listen to our advice. He went and rented a house. They rented a house and they gathered and prayed. The imam has COVID-19. His wife had COVID-19. His father had COVID-19. And it's just, and then he apologized later. But it is a problem that if a person does not use the wisdom God has given them, or the understanding application of religion in context. You know what we say? We say that there's a text, religious text, and there's a context. And religion has to apply the text to context, because text without context is pretext. But it's very important for us to see in which context to apply in the text. And I really appreciate what the bishop was saying in this regard, because I do believe that religious leaders have moral responsibility not to misinform and to misguide. We're supposed to inform people and guide people to do the right thing. And if we come in between people and their medicine and people and their healthcare providers by providing for them misconception, misinformation, by saying, if you come to the mosque, you'll be healed. Don't go to the doctor. God will is stronger than any, using the right phrase in the wrong place. God is powerful, but God is the one who taught us to seek medicine. We have Muslim scholars in Islamic history they were scholars in theology, but they were medical doctors at the same time, to show that there's no contradiction between the two. And they developed amazing literature in medicine. In matter of fact, one of the Muslim scholars have issued a religious opinion, this is about 7 centuries ago, He said, it's not befitting for a Muslim who knows there's a medical doctor in a particular town and then goes and live in another town where there's no medical doctor. It's go and live where the doctors are. These contradictions that we see sometimes in preaching, whether among Muslims or Christians or others, by saying to people that first we doubt there's a virus, we go with the conspiracy theory, and then we say if there's a virus that maybe if we wash, which is Muslim do wudu, was washing before prayer, if you wash 5 times a day, you'll be protected from the virus or get healed. You have to wash with soap your hand, not with water only. And if you go to the mosque and you pray next to one another and put your face on the ground, you're going to contract disease. Therefore, you have to have distance. And they say now the mosque is closed until the risk been reduced, then you have to listen to that. That in America, in the United States, we have a very advanced medical system to some extent. We have stayed at home more than 2 months. I've been giving all my sermon from home. And I was telling community, do not feel guilty that you are not in the mosque. Thank God that you have a house. Because when the rule says stay in home, there's some people don't have a home to stay at. If you have a home, thank God for that. If they said wash your hands with soap, there's many people around this world that don't have running water. Therefore, people have to show appreciation even to the fact that they can be able to stay home and wash hands. But we have to help people who don't have a home, who don't have running water. I'm telling Muslim community in America and the Christian community and the Jewish community, we should donate and help people around the globe who don't have those means. That's why we're collecting here in America money helping doctors overseas to buy equipment for them because they are at the front line. And this now virus does not discriminate, have reached every corner of the globe, have affected every ethnic group, every religious group, rich and the poor, and the famous and non-famous. Does not discriminate. For we are in this together, we are in the same boat, and then the religious leaders have a moral responsibility to tell their followers, help your medical doctors by following the guidelines.
Thank you. Dr. Rinamo, you've heard what our religious leaders have said. Audience, you're following. I know you're sending in your questions. We'll soon ask your question. We just want to give them some talking time so that they can pass out their message properly. We'll send you questions in the last probably 10 minutes of the show. Dr. Ben Rinamo, you have some thoughts to share, some questions to share. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's a great privilege to share this stage with people I've respected so much. Imam Majid, thank you very much. And the Lord Bishop Matthew Hassan Koka is one of my mentors as far as Nigeria is concerned. And interestingly, when I read your book, Witness to Justice, I think that book, I had to read it over and over again. I gained a lot. And one of the most informative books I've read concerning Nigeria history. So let's get back to COVID-19. And we know religious leaders, we have a lot of followership. They have a lot of followership. People believe in them when they speak. And it has been worrisome that a lot of them, the kind of information they give to their followers is a bit different from what the medical experts are saying. And that is making these efforts by the government and the medical experts very difficult, and in obeying the medical guidelines. And what do we have to say about this? Because everybody has to be in tandem. Everybody has to be in the same page for us to be able to follow up to get this achieved desired results. And that is very important because they have a large followership. If they tell them the right things, that will really help us. And is there any way, we know the Catholic bishops, the Catholics, they are a little bit more organized and they are doing things synchronously, but the other groups, Is there any way, like, say, for instance, we have organizations like in Nigeria, the Christian Association of Nigeria. Is there any way they can come and talk to all these religious leaders to, to give, so that they can give their members the right scientific information to guide the government, and this will really help, and even in other parts of the world. Then number two, for both of you, even in the midst of the pandemic, there's increased agitations by religious leaders that the religious houses should be opened, even when we are still trying to, curtail the spread of the virus. What do we have to say about this? Do we think it's necessary at this time? And thank you very much. I would like your response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. Let me say that, first of all, let me thank you for your very, very kind sentiments, and inform all of you doctors who are very young and in Nigerians who are in America. Please remember, you are behind and you are tight. Let me say that in this regard, let's not generalize. I think that I give a lot of commendation, and the Christian and Muslim leadership in Nigeria has worked very well. For example, the Eid was on, Salah was only last week. The Sultan, for the first time, had to call on Muslims to suspend the Eid prayer. It had never happened before. And here in Sokoto, I think I can actually make the point. The governor of Kaduna State had announced a lockdown. And one of the imams here, local imams here in Sokoto, took to social media, to curse, abuse, vilify, denigrate, the governor of Kaduna State over the fact that he had said that, Eid prayers were not going to be held. And as I'm talking to you now, at least the last I checked, the gentleman is cooling his heels and explaining himself to the security authorities in Kaduna. This, for me, this is how it should be. All of us must take full responsibility for our actions or our inaction. And a lot of the issues are about law and order. The second point is that the Christian Association of Nigeria is working very closely. And I know that during this week, both the Sultan and the president of the Christian Association of Nigeria are going to be having a meeting with the chairman of the presidential task force, of COVID-19, to talk a bit more seriously, weighing and assessing the realities on the ground. What really should we do in terms of going forward? Many states have reacted slightly differently. Here in Sokoto and other places, our churches have slightly opened. And I can tell you that in each and every one of those places, we have been very, very strict. Churches where 2,000, 3,000 people would be in. Today, we are having just about 20, 30, 40, or whatever the case. So, we are being quite meticulous. If there are any problems at all, they are not very significant. Because I think that in this area, the leadership, yes, people started with a lot of anxiety. And there were religious leaders trying to behave as if they were, more Catholic than the Pope. And then we're trying to turn this into politics, to make a point of maybe governors who love their people or love their religion, and governors who don't like their religion. Luckily, as I said, both the Sultan and the president of Khan have demonstrated, the kind of leadership that is required. So for us in Nigeria, and I can say this, I guess, for right across the board, that the leadership has been pretty firm and solidly cooperative in terms of its relationship with government. So we've really not had any significant demonstration of lack of commitment to this process as far as the religious community in Nigeria are concerned. And as I said, for me, you break the law, you pay for it. It's not a question of being a priest or being a bishop or being an imam.
I appreciate the questions, and appreciate all the doctors actually asking all of those questions, and we appreciate the service. I really appreciate what my dear the bishop have said just now. I know the Sultan of Sokoto, His Eminence Hajj Abu Bakr, very well, and we have worked with him in the issue of vaccination, and our organization, International Interfaith Peace Corps, have worked with him in this issue, and I appreciate very much what the bishop have said in this regard. In America, we, as Muslims and Christians and Jews and people of other religion, we work together in our neighborhood, that we listen to the guidelines from the local authority. When the governor of Virginia have the lockdown, he met with the religious leaders, the Muslims and the Christians and the people of Jewish and other people, other faiths. And he explained to us why there's a lockdown. And then they have phases now. We are in phase one. Phase one allow 50% of religious community to accommodate with the physical distance in the mosque and the churches and so forth. But even that being said, I said to people in my community, we'll open in a way that is smart opening, meaning that make sure that we do everything in place to protect the vulnerable people in our community. But I do believe that it is a responsibility, of course, of all the religious leaders to adhere to the law, and no one should use their influence, religious influence, on their followers to break the law. That's very important, because that could be a very dangerous game. You're having people being have more than one loyal, they're loyal to the religious leader, going against the law of the land. It creates a problem. But it's very important for us to work together as religious leaders to create awareness and understanding, and we model this example, and therefore I'm so glad to hear that what's happening in Nigeria, but this is also what's happening here in America. And we hope, we pray. I want to end by saying we pray that God Almighty stop this virus of COVID-19, and we do our best, all of us as one community, to stop it.
Thank you, Imam. We're about to round up. I know I told you people were going to stay 1 hour, but a lot of questions that are coming in. I know the bishop has appointment at the top of the hour. Let me just take 2, 3, 4 questions from the audience. I hope you don't mind. Just steal a little bit of 5 minutes from the time. There's a question from United Kingdom. Emmanuel saying growing debate on whether this is. What do you think?
I didn't hear the question.
Punishment from God?
Punishment from God.
Is it a punishment from God or accident? What? Because people are saying that God is punishing us.
Yeah, you want me to answer first or the bishop?
Go ahead.
In no particular order.
It is probably a divine punishment from God. I think that's what.
Yeah.
Maybe, because people are saying that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. First of all, we heard that. We heard some people even pointed to particular community to say God is punishing this particular community, whether that's in America, whether that's in India, whether that's in Africa. There's some people point finger to minorities. Whatever the minority is, they believe that there's a curse coming from those minorities. I just want to say 3 things very quickly. Number one, people cannot use religion to promote racism, and to believe that this particular group of people the source of the virus, because we have seen that in unfortunately some social media. That's number one. Number two, God tested people who are very righteous in Islamic history. In reading the Holy Quran, God tested Moses. Moses was a righteous man. He didn't punish him. He tested him. He tested Jacob. Joseph. There's a test of life that every human being goes through, and no one should interpret that as a punishment to humanity. Number three, that you have to have a relationship with God based on Him being the source of mercy and compassion. not the God of punishing people because sending a virus. God created laws. The laws has virus, has sickness, has health, and God Almighty, when a person being tested with those kind of tests, he compensate them. That's what Islamic teaching is all about. Therefore, it is very troubling to me. People telling somebody who contracted the virus they've been punished by God. This is a really horrible thing to be said.
Bishop, what do you think?
Anyone who's religious.
His Lordship. Sorry. Yeah. Is this a punishment? Are we being punished?
You know,
Who knows?
we're always very quick to appropriate the voice of God. If you are landlord suddenly dies, you say, well, it is God that has caught him. If your landlord dies, you still have an obligation to pay your rent. Now, God is not in the business of settling our quarrels or settling our debts. And that is why it's a pity that you hear some pastors appropriating and calling on God to fire on other people. We are all God's children, including the armed robbers, the criminals, all of us are God's children. Now, the first thing to understand is that this pandemic, nobody can find a single explanation for it. But you remember, if you look at the book of Job, now when Job was afflicted with his sufferings, the first thing was that people said, and according to the Jewish people, if you're a righteous person, God will reward you. And they knew, because even the Bible talks about God acknowledging Job's righteousness. So the question was, why would a decent, God-fearing man like Job suffer? Now, if you remember his 3 friends who decided to visit him to condole with him, when they came, they had processed all their answers. But when they arrived, the Bible tells us that they sat down with Job for 7 days and 7 nights. They couldn't utter a word because they had never seen anything like this. So I think the first thing for us to do is to stop the talking and understand that there is need for us to pause. What God is doing, we have no idea. On March 27th, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, did something that was very dramatic. All the speech he normally gives, the Orbe at, Orbe, which is to Rome and to the world. One of the things the Pope said was, he said, what we are facing is like a new flame. But then from it, good news is going to spring. And for us as Christians, our belief is that God has a purpose for everything that he does. Even the fact that we have had the medical capacity to deal with this issue, to restrain it and bring it to where we are today, should be seen as part and parcel of God's dealing with this problem. So I don't think that we should be so quick to say that God is punishing us. If God needs to punish us, he created the world. He doesn't share his glory with anybody. If he wants to shut down, he will shut down. And he doesn't need your permission to do that. So God has presented with a challenge. The world is facing a challenge. And there are a lot of positive things that have come out of this. Very many positive things. Today, I called a friend of mine. He's a medical doctor. I called to greet him and wish him happy Pentecost. He didn't pick his phone. When he picked his phone, he called me back. He said to me, Bishop, I was celebrating Mass for my family. And I'm like, you are a heretic. You are not a priest. You are a family. How can you be celebrating Mass? But he was telling me the fact that he now has a bit of power because he's now organizing prayers for his family, something that he had never done before. A friend of mine who lives in New York, who lives in Lagos, tells me that when they are having their morning prayer, his daughter who is in New York takes one of the readings. His other daughter who is in Lagos takes another reading. His other daughter who is in Lagos says the opening, says the prayers of the faithful. So we are witnessing new expressions of our faith that we never thought about. Families are coming closer. Parents are taking leadership in the training of their children. More and more Christians, especially Catholics, are coming to them. They are sitting down and watching the Mass. I hear from friends of mine who are not Catholics, Muslims, and other Christians saying, this is the first time I've watched a Mass from beginning to end. So all we know is that whatever God has decided to do has a purpose and has a meaning. We can only say, as the psalmist says, let us be still and know that God is there.
Before I let you go, Sue, you have a story to share. It's very interesting. If you can just keep it brief so that they could make their conclusion comments. Sue, over to you.
Oh, thank you. I want to build on what the bishop said and what everybody's been saying. It is so true. We know that God is all powerful. We know that God could wave his hand and make all of this go away. And he hasn't done that. And there's a reason for that. We may never know what it is. But personally, I am blessed to be in a situation where I can see where God's been working in my situation. And that's what I want to share with you. My mother was 90 years old when she passed away. About a year ago, her mobility, well, first of all, my father and my mother decided on their own to go to a senior village 12 years ago because they are very, very independent and didn't want to be dependent on any of us children. That was a big value of theirs. So where they live, they have independent living where you have an apartment, and then they have assisted living where you get some nursing care, and then the nursing home where you get full nursing care. My mom was in an independent apartment a year ago and started having a lot of trouble with her mobility. She started having trouble walking. They found she'd had some compression fractures in her vertebrae, and that was causing her a lot of pain. And over the months, she just very rapidly lost mobility to a point where in June of last year, of 2019, she could no longer take care of herself. So she had to move to assisted living. And she lived there for, up until this past March and was just miserable because she couldn't go out and do the things she wanted to do. And then in March, well, first of all, in March 11th, that was the last day I went to visit my mom. The next day, they closed the whole facility, did not allow visitors because of COVID-19. 3 days later, I got a phone call. They had sent her to the hospital because she had an infection. It turned out that because she had trouble getting around, she wasn't even getting up and walking across the room to go to the bathroom. She developed a UTI, an infection. And so she was in the hospital. Since they had to get a clear culture before they could release her, she had to be in the hospital for 9 days because it took 3 days for the culture to grow. So, what a horrible thing. My mom, all of this is going on, and now she has to be in the hospital for 9 days. So that was a horrible thing. And then she came back, and a few weeks later, after the caregiver was inadvertently given COVID by someone who probably wasn't wearing a mask, it spread, and my mother caught COVID. She went to the hospital, and she ultimately ended up passing away. These are all horrible things. But then I look back. I was able to spend the day with my mom. The last day that I was able to go into the facility was the day I had with her. And that was a real blessing. 3 days later, she went to the hospital. The hospital was still allowing visitors. So those 9 days that she was in the hospital, I spent 9 days with my mother when I would not have ever seen her again if I hadn't had those 9 days. That was just such an incredible blessing to be able to spend that time with her. And then
Wow.
And when she went to the hospital, again, I got to spend a little time with her. We got to Zoom. She had excellent care. And since she was going downhill, I'm convinced after that 9 days in the hospital, she was bedbound. She never would have gotten out of bed again. That would have been a living hell for her that she didn't have to go through because she caught COVID. No, COVID's a bad thing, but for her, in a way, it was actually a blessing. So like Job never knew why God allowed all those bad things to happen to him. But he recognized that God was all powerful. He gave praise to God in the end anyway. This story is so powerful. We're still talking about it 3,000 years later. So I would urge you,
go ahead.
ask God, be open and know that God has a reason, even if we don't see it.
Thank you so much, Sue. We're so sorry for what you're going through, and I know it's a difficult time for you. In a rounding comment, Imam and my lordship. But before just quickly, there's over 100 questions. I'll just mention some few names. Nkiru, Jessica, we see your question. Alfred Idomo, we see your question. Philemon, we see your question. Abel, we see your question. Imam Kami, we see your questions. Ariberi Himene, we see your question. Kenneth Okojo, we see your question. James Smith, we see your. There's so many questions coming up, but we can't take all of them. We're out of time. In conclusion, millions of people are going to watch this video someday. We're going to ask Imam first of all, from the Islamic perspective, what are your closing words? Where do we go from here? What do we do to come out of this crisis with our faith and our health still intact? I'll still ask the same question to the Lordship. in very few minutes.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to show my appreciation and gratitude for you guys to put this program together, and my great appreciation for your organization for the great awareness that you're creating on this issue. I want to end by saying that I think the world have witnessed something that have not witnessed in recent history, have brought us closer, and it reminds us that all our blood is the same, and we are one family, and we have to work together to address the need of the world, of every human being. Christians, Muslims, and Jews, at least those three religions I know for sure, they believe that we're created from Adam and Eve. We are one family, and our humanity have been now really tested, but also have been confirmed and affirmed by this crisis. May God bless you, and God bless especially our continent, Africa. I'm originally from Africa, and may God Almighty heal those who are sick and protect those who are working in the front line, doctors and people in health field, and those who are doing essential services. I mean, thank you so much.
Thank you, Imam. Bishop, same thing. Where do we go from here? What do we do? How do we keep our faith and our health intact?
Well, I think the first question to ask is where is here and where do we want to go to? Those are not questions we can answer. But let me say this very quickly. Look, the world is never going to be the same again. Whenever things like this happen, yesterday I didn't know anything about Zoom before COVID. I didn't know anything about blue jeans before COVID. Now, today I saw a trailer saying that the Zoom's finances have gone up. They're probably now about $50 billion rich. Are they going to say, thank God for COVID? I don't know. When somebody dies, those who are crying, somebody dies in the village, people begin to cry. The coffee maker begins to smile because fortune has smiled on him. Now, the point to make is that God has a purpose for everything. And like Imam has said, and again, I invoke the words of the Holy Father, when he talked about the fact that COVID-19 is testing the whole human family. And this is a test that we must pass, whether we like it or not. It's a test that we must pass. Hopefully, prayerfully. If you look at today's readings, if you were at Mass, today is Pentecost. And when the Holy Spirit appeared, the apostles were locked in a room out of fear. Now, as a result of that, see where Christianity and see where the world is. So the point I'm making is the sacrifices of the hundreds of thousands of those who have died will never be in vain. God grant them eternal rest. They have not died for nothing. If all that is to bring all of us together, then their deaths will not have been a misfortune. Then COVID-19 will not necessarily have been a misfortune. I think we'll grow stronger. We will be better Christians. We'll be better, human beings. And prayerfully, if all that this does to us is to help us appreciate that all of us in the final analysis breathe the same air, want the same things, want the same dreams, and so on and so forth, the world will be better for it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know Dr. Francis just joined us from Maryland, USA. We will not have time to take your comment because we have to let his Lordship and the Imam go. We told them we're going to stick to time and we have to let them go. Thank you so much. You've heard it all. The strong message of hope. Why we have this show is not to instill fear. No, we want to analyze the problem. And I'm grateful that the two leaders, great leaders of faith, ended with strong message of hope. We'll get stronger. We'll rise up stronger after this. We'll see at the other end of the pandemic. Thank you so much. I will keep saying thank you a million times to your Lordship and to Imam Majid. Thank you so much. Thank you. And on that note, we'll be rounding up. We have a music that Sue dedicated to everybody that is passing through crisis at this time, and we would like to share it with the audience. We'll see. Sue, thank you so much. First of all, I want to be sure that you can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
And can you hear the
Thank
song?
you, Doctors Global
Yes.
Conference, for this valuable public health. Thank you, Doctors Global. And to close, I'm going to sing.
Can you
What
hear
a
the sound of the
Wonderful World.
song?
Yes, I can. Well, I could. It's breaking up, but I can hear it.
So we just had a little technical issues there. We'll fix it in 1 second. We'll try it again to see if we can fix it in 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I hear it.
I'll fix it and see. Oh, can you hear it? It's computer. Computers give us okay.
Thank you, Doctors Global
can hear
Conference, for this valuable public health information on COVID-19. I'm Sue LaCourse, and to close, I'm going to sing What a Wonderful World. I'm dedicating this song to my mom, Betty Hazel, and to everyone who is reaching out to help those suffering from this virus, especially the caregivers, nurses, nurse practitioners, and doctors, and other staff. For our vulnerable seniors in nursing homes, sing What a Wonderful World by George David Weiss and Bob Thiel. I see trees and I think
Thank you so much, Your Lordship. I'll let you go. And on that note, we'll end up the show for today. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you, everybody.
But we'll try and play the song again because it was giving us some technicalities, some technical issues, but we'll try and see if it's going to play again. We'll just do it again one more time. Just hang in there and we'll see how it goes. It's a beautiful song and it's a song I would love you to listen to.
close. Caring for our vulnerable seniors in nursing homes and senior villages. So now I'm going to play for you and sing What a Wonderful World by George David Weiss and Bob Thiel. I see trees of green.